when we think or when we have feelings of deja vu, when we have feelings like, have I dreamt about this and it's happening to me right now? When we have those feelings of, have I met this person before? All of that and so much more is possibly just a computer program driving the entire world. We are sleeping somewhere, but we are dreaming, and the dream is perpetual, and it's so real that we think that the dream is the reality.
Mr. Ankur Warikoo.
How are you, sir?
When it comes to the world of startups, the guys want to be you, the girls want to be with you. So how does it feel?
That's like the worst way that you have started me and brought me in, man. It's like no pressure at all.
What's your story? I mean, a lot of people probably know it, but I just want you to run the audiences through it either way.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating life, Ranveer. I am so lucky and privileged to have lived this life. To be honest, if you asked me when I was 20, would I be doing this and would I be where I am? The answer would be a conclusive no. I was preparing for my life to become a space scientist. I was working towards become an academic, and went to the US. Figured very quickly it wasn't for me. Dropped everything, came back to India, had to start my life all over again at the age of 24, by which most of my peers from school and college were already gone on to do multiple great things in their life. And then went for a business school education, did consulting, and 11 years back became an entrepreneur. That completely changed the course of my life. And here I am.
What did you not like about America? Why did you choose to come back?
You know what? I actually loved the US. I really liked my time there. I didn't like what I was doing, but I loved where I was. I just couldn't find a middle ground between what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. I speak often about this, that the US is a fantastic way to uncover your own self. Because here's what the US does. It offers you all the possible distractions that the world has to offer. Like literally everything. You have money, you have entertainment, you have gaming, you have food, you have porn. You literally have everything that you want at your disposal. And then it asks you, are you able to navigate through all this distraction and still make it for yourself? And I love that about the US. And I love that about the meritocracy of how it organizes itself. But I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And that was the big reason why I came back.
What I read about your past is that you grew up wanting to join NASA and working as I don't know the term for it, a rocket scientist, a space engineer. I just want to make it sound cool. But basically you wanted to work in the realms of space. So did you like not try that? Or did you not enjoy that after trying it? Like what happened?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it after trying. So I pursued it. I pursued it for a really long extent. I was actually doing my PhD when I was in the US. And 2 years into it, I just realized it was something that I was good at, but it wasn't something that made me happy. And that's why I came
Your
back.
PhD in what?
Hold on to your chair. In Astro Physics.
Oh, wow. Nice. Can you take us through, I mean, without taking us into the depths of that subject, what's that subject about? Like, what do you learn? Why did you choose to do a PhD in astrophysics?
So there is a stream called astronomy, which most of us know of. It's basically looking at the stars and figuring out through the light that they emit and the visual mapping that they have, what are they all about. Astrophysics, on the other hand, doesn't look at them necessarily, but looks at their motion. So it's the physics of things. And through that physics, it concludes pretty much the same things that you would perhaps conclude if you were to look at it through a telescope. So it's just another stream of looking into the night sky and figuring out where do we belong and what are we up to.
So the next obvious question that's in the mind of a lot of my young college listeners is, Mr. Warikoo, do you believe in aliens? Like, do you think that there is extraterrestrial life out there?
Absolutely, yes, 100%. I, I have grown up on X Files. It was the only show that mattered to me. I used to look at it diligently, and this was back when there was no binging happening, right? So you literally had to wait every week for an episode to come by, and I studied so much about alien life, about extraterrestrials, about all these conspiracy theories, whether we have landed on the moon or not, what happened in Roswell in 1947, have aliens visited the US, have they visited India? Oh my God, I have stories and stories about it, but yeah, I do believe in them.
Yeah, same. I think a huge chunk of my childhood, right from the time I think I discovered reading at around the age of 10 till say about 17, when the world kind of tells you, no, follow science, get into engineering college. That little chunk was all about the occult and studying aliens and studying about things like the Roosevelt incident. I'm going to ask you a kind of muffat question. Have you had any like alien encounters, or have you ever felt like you got abducted yourself?
Nay, nay, nothing like that here. I think I saw three UFOs when I was in college. I'm pretty convinced I
Okay.
did, but that's the
Hmm.
closest that I've come to.
I study a lot of. I mean, again, this is just a subject of interest for me. So I think on our Instagram live stream, I told you about these books by this guy called Graham
Yeah, yeah,
Hancock.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And he's basically a alternative history guy, so he tries to prove that all the history we're taught in school isn't true, and there's actually a lot more to discover. Like how I think one of the early history lessons that I had in school was about the four civilizations, so Chinese, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and ancient Indian. um, but Graham Hancock strongly believes that there was a whole bunch of civilizations before that, like right from around 50,000 BC, 60,000 BC, around. And they had a lot of contact with so called aliens. And that's what he's trying to discover. And what happened is, once the Ice Age kicked in about 11,000, 12,000 years ago, a lot of the landmass that we know today was actually way more inland, and there was a lot
Correct.
more on the coast all over the world. But the Ice Age kind of took over all those land masses. That's why we hear stories about Dwarka and Atlantis and all these places which got submerged. But there's a lot of talks about how aliens and humans would interact in that phase of human history. And he, as well as a lot of the yoga that I've read, speaks very positively about alien culture, extraterrestrial culture. So I'd love to know what you think about all this. What's your input on this whole ancient human alien interaction?
It's the same thing, Ranveer, that we spoke about the other day. I firmly believe that we're not the first human civilization to have lived on Earth. We're
Mm,
possibly the second or the third, or maybe even higher than that civilization. And I remember this book that really fascinated me when I was young. It was called The Chariots of the God.
mm,
And this book was all about the fact that everything that we have come to believe as a remnant of ancient civilization, whether it's the pyramids, whether it's the iron pillar in Delhi, whether it's the Mayan civilization and all that they've accomplished, all of that only happened because we were visited by extraterrestrial intelligence, and they were the ones who gave us all the superpower and all the know-how that we needed to get that done. And the way that
mm,
he spoke about it, which is quite fascinating if you think about it, is if you were to go to a really backward tribe today, let's say you go to any forest tribe deep in Madhya Pradesh or Andamans or wherever, and you carry with you your iPad, and you carry with you your phone, and you carry with you an internet connection, and you carry with you weapons, all of them will look like literally godlike, just as we think gods were as we depict them. Like literally everything. The weapons
Hmm.
that we have, the artilleries. Imagine them looking at what a helicopter is, or what a parachute is, or what
Hmm.
uh, just a simple car is, and they would be just mind blown. So in their own limited primitive mind, they would start drawing us out and saying, "Oh my God, a loudspeaker was like Shiv Vani." And then an iPad happened, and that was like God's tablet of 10 commandments. And I'm not being blasphemous here, but no, you get the drift. And that perhaps is what happened. That's exactly what happened.
What's your opinion on the modern world with respect to extraterrestrial life? Do you think that Area 51 is finally going to announce that aliens have been visiting us for a while?
I I don't know, man. I really don't know. Here is what I genuinely think. I think that there is a higher probability, Ranveer, that we are all living in a simulation than the fact that aliens are visiting us right now.
Can you explain this further? I like this.
Yes. So if you've seen the Matrix, the movie, I genuinely believe that we are in a matrix. I, I, I genuinely believe that when we think, or when we have feelings of deja vu, when we have feelings like, have I dreamt about this and it's happening to me right now? When we have those feelings of, have I met this person before? Like this person sounds or looks so familiar. When we have this feeling like, oh my God, this is such a small world. How do you even know? Like, how are we even connected? All of that and so much more is possibly just a computer program driving the entire world. We are sleeping somewhere, but we are dreaming, and the dream is perpetual, and it's so real that we think that the dream is the reality, which is what happens to us, right? When we wake up, there's so many times
Hmm.
when we're like, am I awake, am I dreaming, is this real, is this not? And it's quite likely that that is that's what's happening right now. हमें लगता है कि हमारी डेस्टिनी है और हमारा कर्मा है और हमारा ये सब है, but it'll be quite it'll be quite a slap on all our faces if all that we know is it's just a computer program somewhere running and making it happen.
Yeah, so again, this is a big reason I kind of took a deep dive into spirituality like 4 or 5 years ago, because spirituality, the correct spiritual books talk about all these concepts from a very yoga, kind of dharmic perspective. And I'm not
Yeah.
talking about the Vimans you read about in like Mahabharata, Ramayana. They actually explain the nature of life in very trippy ways. So there's a chapter in this book called The Autobiography of a Yogi. It's kind of little later in the book. It's just about the astral world. And the whole experience of reading that book up till that chapter is like, it's very kind of spiritual. It's very kind of a feel good book. It kind of strengthens your faith in God and positivity. And then they throw in this one chapter which is like, it blasts you out of your chair, where he explains the astral world in detail. Have you read this? Have you read this book?
I've read the book, but I don't recall this, so clearly I haven't paid attention to it.
So basically he explains the astral world in detail. I think it's like chapter 41, 42. The chapter is called My Guru Returns or something. Basically the protagonist's guru has passed away, and he comes back to explain, like his soul comes back to explain the meaning and the nature of the astral world. So he talks about some very, again, for lack of a better word, trippy concepts in terms of, he explains why the human experience exists in the first place, and it's basically, it's to test the free will of all souls. Therefore, what is a soul? Then he goes into explaining that, imagine that there's a massive ball of light which you refer to as God or a higher power, or when people say, oh, there's something that's omnipresent, that's that ball of light that encapsulates everything, including hell, including heaven, all that.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine that ball of light is in a human being's brain. Okay, and you take one tiny cell from the brain and place it on your palm. So that cell is the equivalent of one person's soul. So Ankur's soul or Ranveer's soul is that one cell, but which is kind of tied together by being a part of that same ball of light. Now, on the journey from the brain to the palm of that God's hand, um, there is something called 7 planes, and in each plane, now I don't know what the explanation of a plane is. I don't know whether it is an actual physical plane. I don't know whether it's something beyond human perception. But on each plane, you kind of leave a part of yourself and you reach the lowest plane, which is the earth plane. There are lower planes than this as well, but we are on one of like the middle planes. So the lower planes would be what we refer to as hell or hellish planets or hellish realms. But anyway, you leave parts of yourself in the higher 7 realms, and that's why there are 7 chakras, because each of them are your antennas to connect to like your higher 7 planes. And basically, as you spiritually advance, you get reconnected again with those parts of yourself that you've left in those planes. Therefore, concepts like deja vu or concepts like these larger than life things where you feel that something is off. When you look at your hands and you ask yourself, why am I within this capsule called the human body? It's actually all your 7 versions of yourself which are like kind of getting confused and questioning each other, or trying to pull you back to that memory of where you came from. And that's why in the human experience they say spiritual purpose is like important, because you're going back to your natural self, which is not that one cell, it's actually that ball of light. And when you do reach that ball of light, it's called mukti or enlightenment or whatever. But people think it ends there. It's not as simple as that. In the chapter, he talks about once you reach mukti in this plane, you go to a much higher plane called the astral plane. And the astral plane is the so-called world of dreams, where it's basically, how do dreams work? When you're lucid dreaming, if you think, okay, I want a burger in my hand, there'll be a burger in your hand suddenly. Like anything you wish for, I want to fly now, you'll end up flying. So the astral world works just like that, where anything you can think of can physically be felt. And that's the challenge of the astral world, that it's so seductive that people get stuck there. But even in the astral world, there is a certain evolution that you're supposed to go through, which is again a very spiritual process in that world. And then you move into something called the causal world, which is a higher version of the astral world, where there aren't all these distractions. It's pure peace. And the causal world, the only way you can explain it to another human being is, sometimes when you're really tired and you sleep, you just close your eyes. And then when you open your eyes, it's like 9 hours have passed. Like you don't know where those 9 hours have gone. So that's where you've entered a causal state of being, where you lose a sense of identity, you lose a sense of experience, and you just wake up back into the human experience. And even after the causal world, there is the actual ball of light which you're supposed to connect with once again. So this is a very rough, raw explanation of this. Yeah, done on a podcast, but there's like a lot of books about this. So the books would be Autobiography of a Yogi, and this book called Doorways to Light, and Channeled Knowledge of the Rishis. These are the 3 books I would recommend. The third one is a series of 14 books which you can order off Amazon. Very heavy stuff, but incredible if you want to take a deep dive. Ankur, back to you.
You've inspired me to read this book again, man. I lost so much of touch from all the things that you said, and just as you were saying it, Ranveer, I just felt those wave of emotions come by. It's time for me to go back to the book, and I think that'll be my biggest takeaway from this podcast. So thank you for this explanation.
I'm glad. But do you think that somewhere it was that spiritual question inside you as a kid which made you think that you want to join NASA and become a NASA engineer? Like, do you think it was these spiritual questions that caused something to change inside you?
I do know that I used to ask, and this is my mom speaking, not me, but my mom does say that you used to ask some very weird questions when you were a kid. Questions like, क्या फायदा है ये सब करने का? क्या होगा बड़े होके? क्या फायदा है नौकरी करने का? And they're like, you're a kid. Like, why are you even asking these questions? But I do know that joining NASA or space was, I feel, just infatuation. It's something that all kids in some way want to feel good about themselves, like an astronaut or a scientist, and work in a space agency. And NASA was just so cool, at least back then when I was growing up. But over the years, I think lately is when I have begun to question a lot about what do I want to do, What does peace and happiness mean to me? Is it really chasing what the world lays out as their definition of success? Is not doing those things really failure? And I think a reflection on that has made me a lot more contemplative, a lot more aware about what drives me, what makes me happy, what just brings me joy. And the biggest thing that has happened, Ranveer, is I have become, वो हिंदी में एक word होता है समता. So that is what I've actually started experiencing, which is a balance. You're neither overly happy when something nice happens to you. You're neither overly sad when something bad happens to you. You're almost like numb. But that's a poor description because numb almost suggests like you're not living. You're actually living. And you're living meaningfully, but you're not allowing your emotions to get the better of you. Which I really like.
I think one of the most impactful threads I read on Twitter was I told you this on a live stream as well. It was something you wrote as my lessons up till the age of 39, and I'd written a similar one about my lessons at 26, and mine was primarily about calming down angst and working hard. And then at 39, once those hard work principles are established, once those less angst principles are established, it's very interesting to see how does a 39-year-old human think. And you had all these like concepts about leadership. I think you had one or two about family life as well. I want to ask you that, dude, like once you go towards the age of 40, what happens within your head? Like, and I'm not just talking about Ankur, I'm talking about everyone, human beings, dude. What happens near 40? Like, do some people feel pressure? Do some people feel like, oh shit, I've not made it? Do some people want to go even harder in the paint because now things are established? What happens?
I think the overwhelming feeling, Ranveer, is that of where did this time suddenly go? It's like मैं 20 का था, मैं अभी college में था. Like I literally just graduated right now, and where the F did these 20 years just suddenly go? Like what did I do? And that to a fair degree of people brings in a lot of unhappiness, a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of just general discontentment about what all they've gotten done in life. And they're like, shit, I've been working so hard, but for what? And I still haven't gotten anywhere, and I still am clueless. And the number of people, because I, of course, have a circle which is mostly 40-year-olds, it is not funny and definitely not something which makes me feel happy. The number of people who still don't know what they want from life.
Oh, wow.
And they're still trying to find that out. They're like, I don't know why I'm doing this job. I'm doing it because it gets me money and it's like this regular affair of a monthly salary and of appraisals and of bonuses and of promotions and all that. But I really don't know if I were to pause and ask myself, why am I doing this? Like, kya ho raha hai? What is the driver? Does it bring me joy? Does it add any meaning to my life? No. And then the other overwhelming feeling is if you do have or don't have relationships, then the appreciation of it. If you have one, then you appreciate what you have, whether it's a family, whether it's the fact that your parents are still with you, whether it's the fact that you have kids and you're seeing them grow, or the fact that you don't, whether you are in broken relationships, in toxic relationships, not in a relationship at all, or have lost your partner or have lost your family, then the sheer realization that at this age and going so forward, that's the only thing perhaps that matters, which will center you back to what life's purpose or at least joy could be. So I think it just swings between these two extremes, which is, have I done anything professionally, personally? Have I really stood up to what I wanted to do? And then this other extreme, which is, I love what I have in terms of relationships, or I miss what I don't have in terms of relationships.
Dude, when I look at you, I feel like you're someone who's gained a lot of zen, a lot of peace. So what have you done different as a 40-year-old when compared to other like 40-year-olds around you?
I feel the biggest thing that drives me and perhaps my thoughts, Ranveer, is this deep sense of curiosity. I Here is how I describe myself. I'm someone who loves questions but don't love answers.
Hmm.
And that's the best way that I describe myself. I love asking questions. I love asking why, how, what, when, whether, if. But it's like this dog chasing a car. I am a dog chasing a car and I have no plan what to do if the car stops. I'm just chasing the car. And that is what happens. And you replace the car with a question. And I'm just chasing that question. And I love like, why did Ranveer ask me this question? Like, what is it that Ranveer has done that makes him stand apart from anyone else his age? Why did she act or behave in that way? Why did I lose my temper that day? Why did I feel insecure at that point of time? I constantly keep asking myself that, and I think just the reflection of it has made me richer around about what I think, how I operate, and then I see most of the patterns are the same. I'm no different than anyone else, and I think while we are given this drug that we are all different, but I think we're all different in what can come out of us, but we are very same in terms of how we react and how we feel.
Hmm.
That is what has been a big learning, that whatever it is that I'm going through, it's quite likely that anyone else in the same situation will go through the same thing. So if I can in some way create that awareness amongst myself, within myself and amongst others, then it just makes for a much easier stay on earth, if you will. So curiosity.
What I gained from your answer was curiosity fills those voids. And I feel everybody has certain voids in their life. Early on, it might be about, oh, can I kill it in my career? Later, it becomes relationships. Then it becomes existentialism. But curiosity kind of fills that void of existentialism. And that's a question I've had a lot in my head. Again, I'm asking out of curiosity. This is something I asked Pratik Kuhad as well, who's 30 years old. And I don't know why I have been getting thoughts about fatherhood. Like, I don't know whether it's like, how they go like, oh, certain women at in their late 20s will get strong thoughts about motherhood, and then it's supposed to be a biological phenomenon. Does it also apply to guys? Like, do guys also get thoughts like that? Like, hey, I need to raise a family. I don't know. So, my next obvious question to you is about the nature of life after you've had kids. Like, what in a kid's journey changes you as a man?
Wow, that's a terrific question, man. I will. I'll tell you the truth, and this is something that I don't think I've shared publicly ever. It's possibly the most gratifying thing, and I'd say the thing that I will be most proud of on my deathbed, which is just the fact that I got to experience fatherhood. And here's why. It so happened that around the time when Vidur, who's our elder son, he's 9 years old, he was born, which was 2011. I saw a lot of individuals who were shaped up as adults, and the experiences and the emotions that they felt as adults because of what happened to them as kids, because of how their relationship with their parents were, because of how their parents were as individuals. And it dawned upon me that I too was an outcome of how my parents brought me up in a very meaningful manner. And I don't think I had reflected upon that as much as I did when that happened. And it was serendipitous just by chance. And then there was this insane sense of responsibility, almost to the extent of being acting as pressure, which is shit. I'm bringing this life onto earth, and whatever I operate as or like as an individual, and how we along with my wife operate as parents, is going to shit define someone's life, like puri zindagi. And it was just insane. It got me thinking about so many things. How should we, should we shout at him? Should we scold him at all? Should we give him all the freedom that he wants? Should we allow him to do whatever it is? Should we unschool him? Should we school him? Should we send him to a CBSE board or an international school? What kind of kids will he grow around? So on and so forth, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. And it was quite overwhelming. But then the reason I call fatherhood as such a blessing and such a privilege is because I realized there are very few principles that you need to take care of, beyond which, if you as an individual are not stuck up on how your kids are raised, you will actually go on to raise wonderful human beings, and that's what matters. And and there is, like, if I were to show you Vidur's room, he has a wall which is painted with blackboard paint, so it converts into a blackboard. और उसके सबसे ऊपर we've written these 3 values that we want him to always stand by, which is respect for everyone, a very high sense of responsibility, and zero tolerance for mediocrity. And I think that's it. It's just it. If he respects everyone, irrespective of how they speak, who they are, where they've come from, and so on and so forth, if he always acts responsibly and he has zero or very low tolerance for mediocrity, we're sorted. He's sorted. And it doesn't need to be anything else. And then the game completely changed in 2017 when our daughter was born. That was like, my God. I admittedly, I didn't want a second child. My wife was like, no, Vidur needs a sibling. Vidur needs a sibling. It means a lot. And she comes from a family of 3 siblings. I have a sister who's 6 years younger to me. So I never really had a sibling relationship. It was more like a elderly guardian of sorts. But she was like, no, we need to have a sibling relationship. And I was like, yeah, Vidur is such an angel. And I can't afford 2 boys in my life. So the likelihood that we will get a girl who is just as good is like 25%. So मेरा stats काम कर रहा था. And I was like, I can't play a gamble on those odds. It's not what. But thankfully, it was a girl, and she's such a blessing, because then having a daughter, Ranveer, is when I think you experience true fatherhood. Because when you have a boy, then it's like, a friend. But when you get a girl, that's completely something else. That's like you suddenly have to be a provider, a protector, plus at the same time instill in her the essence of equality, the essence of equal opportunity. And it's such a wonderful balance to find and strive for. And daughters just are wonderful. They're just wonderful.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, this is something I've always thought about, and what would it feel like having a daughter? But when you articulated it like that, I get it, man. Like, I mean, I don't exactly get it, but I get where you're going with the whole protection aspect. Like, you feel a certain sense of, hey, I'm not going to let anything harm you. Like, I get that completely.
Exactly.
I got to ask you like a tough question. This is something I discussed with my friends a while back. Is it true that raising kids in India today is like really expensive? Like, is it like a big financial burden?
Yeah, it can be if what you strive for is quite high. So to give you a sense, our kids go to, well, Vidur at least right now. Uzma's too young. Vidur goes to an international school, and it is expensive. It is expensive. It's his annual fees is more than what 30% of people in my startup earn. And it's just the truth. So yes, it is. But again, as I said, we're very privileged. So I shouldn't be complaining. But it is expensive. Yes.
Does it, like, after you've had kids? Okay, forget that whole boy is my friend, girl is my responsibility. But after you've had kids, do you get as a man, do you get a certain sense of, okay, now I've got to work even harder, or do you get more motivation? Like, what happens inside you? Like, what does that, they say that every age that you've experienced in your life, a remnant of that age is always alive within you. So an 8-year-old Ankur would still be alive inside a 40-year-old Ankur. So that 25-year-old, who's all about career and hustle and growth, what is that guy doing inside you now after you've had kids?
You know what? It's funny you asked this question. It's such a terrific question again, Ranveer. I've gone on the other side. I am someone who is so comfortable with losing everything that we have, including my identity, that I would love our kids to also experience it. So in 2016, we went through a really bad phase because we raised money and a lot of money for Nearby, which is a startup that I founded in 2015. I made some really bad calls, very bad financial decisions. So we very quickly ran out of money. We were fundraising, and it was really hard. So we had to cut down on our salaries. I had to take, and my founders as well, we had to take cuts. We were not making as much money. So it was just a really hard time. And during that time, we were what I would call a classic quintessential urban poor family, where we had a house to live in and a car to drive, but we literally had no money in our bank. We literally had no money in our bank. And I distinctly remember it was Vidur's birthday, and for the longest time, he kept saying, I want to cycle, I want to cycle. And he was ready to cycle, and we wanted to, but believe it or not, we didn't even have money to buy him a cycle. So we actually had to sell my wife's jewelry to buy him a cycle.
Wow.
And I actually reflect upon that and feel really happy about it, because I'm glad that they went through that experience where they saw, and we also experienced it ourselves, that this is where we could get to and yet be happy together. And it really doesn't matter. And I think that year brought about that realization, you don't need a lot to be happy in life. We just keep buying shit because of our status and because what we think the world will perceive of us. But with my kids, the approach always is, we came from nothing. And if we have to go back to nothing, that's perfectly fine. And you will still get to be great individuals. You'll still get wonderful parenting. You'll still get all the love and the care and the comfort that we can provide in whatever means we have. And kya hua if we don't go to an international school? Kya hua if we don't travel in a fancy car? It's okay. So we love that. And I think we're very different in that sense, because we love them playing in dirt. We love them just getting themselves drenched in the rain. We love them going on their own to buy bread and anda and sabzi on their own. Like Vidur at 9, he literally goes and does grocery shopping for us. And I love that about him. I love that about the fact that he can literally cycle his way through and go to the sabzi wala and get aadha kilo nimbu because we want it. And so he's connected, and I love that, because that's how we grew up. That was our upbringing. And in some serendipitous way, if we can still give him glimpses of that, we find that as a good thing. So quite on the contrary, instead of working hard, I'm like, let's just enjoy this journey. Kids are so smart. I don't know, when you left home, I left home when I was 22. I'm convinced that Vidur will leave home when he's like, what, 15? And that means we have like literally 5 or 6 years more with him. Uske baad gaya, like it's done. He has his life, and he's not going to come back in the way that he is today. So we might as well just have a nice happy time with him, whichever manner.
Beautiful. What do you think of 2030 for you personally? Like, considering the fact that your experience in the startup world, so you know where the world of business is going, you kind of have an idea. I know, just speaking to you, you're someone who reads a lot. So I know you already read about these concepts. At the same time, you're aware of like what's happening now. You're in touch with people like Tanmay and myself using social media. What's your calculation for like the next 10 years of your life?
I really don't know. And the best thing is, I don't care.
Okay.
I really don't know. So when I came back from the US, and that was in 2004, long time back, I was heartbroken. It almost felt like a breakup, because I was in love with physics, and I thought that I will go on to date physics, and then we'll get married, and then we'll be like in love forever and ever. And it didn't turn out that way. So I was like, yaar, fayda hi kya hua? Like, I committed myself like 8 years into this. So just like this angst boy out of a broken relationship, I was like, no more goals and no more targets in life. And that's how I have actually, hand on heart, been living life ever since, Ranveer. I commit myself to habits, but not to goals, not to targets. So I know what I want to do every day, and I know that I want to read every day, I want to write every day, I want to create every day, I want to speak to people and spend time with smart people every day. But where does it take me? I don't know, and I couldn't care less. Um, what I know is that this approach has held me in good faith tremendously, where I did for the longest times things clinically and in a disciplined fashion, and they just compounded in such a way that it left me amazed at the opportunities that got created. And I'm fairly certain that that will be the case in 2030 as well. But I don't know what that will be, and I set zero expectations from from that either. I expect a lot from myself in terms of what I need to do, but not what comes out of it.
I think that's where your whole peace vibe is coming from. That I said that you have this vibe of exuding like peace that's coming from a very internal place. In saying that, I know a lot of 50-year-olds and for that matter even 60-year-olds who don't have that vibe of peace, who probably have a certain amount of regret. I see a lot of 50-year-olds actually discouraging a lot of kids. Honestly, all these kids who we talk to off of BeerBiceps, the kids who watch our videos, who want to become entrepreneurs, it's always the parents who are telling them to kind of play it the old school way, like play it safe, not take risks, because that's the time they grew up and they probably had bad experiences. Even when I was starting this journey, so many relatives of mine told me that no, worst move ever, worst move ever.
Exactly.
It was the best thing I was ever doing for myself. But
Exactly.
what's the nature of life at 50 or 60? Do you think it's full of regret for a lot of people? I know it's mixed. You can't like generalize, but what do you think?
I I I think it's a regret for a lot of people, man. It's a regret for a lot of people, and that sucks. It unfortunately sucks because I think regret is the worst way to end your life. It's possibly the worst way to end your
Hmm.
life. Um, and it's unfortunate that so many wonderfully led lives do end up in regret because they just like, what if. So if I were to hazard a guess, I would say most people in their 50s, 60s are just full of regret.
Hmm. And that's because they didn't take the risk of probably listening to that conscience somewhere which was telling them that no, maybe do this different. Or it could be circumstantial. You never know.
Exactly. And it's a lot of people will rationalize it saying, I did the right thing for my family, I did the right thing for the situation that it is. And that would be largely true. But it doesn't take away from the fact that they never did anything for themselves. It's like
Hmm.
as it said, right? The tragedy of life is not death. The tragedy of life is what dies within while you're alive.
Oh, that's hurtful and deep at the same time. Wow. That's some intense statement. But and I see this all around me, man. Like, which is why honestly, I think when beer biceps and shit started working, initially the zone was a lot of yeah, that's all me. It was a very WWE wrestler kind of zone, showing my championship belt. And then very soon I realized that no, 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 no. That's not how this game or this world works. And over the years, that's kind of been blunted down, where I feel I've reached a state of zero celebration because there are really lofty goals I've set for myself, and I don't want to bog myself down with celebration. Also, I'm trying to practice stoicism, which is what you spoke about, that not being bothered by the highs or the lows. That's my current answer for how to live out life. But what about people in their 70s and 80s? And I'll tell you my version of what I observe. I have a 90-year-old granddad who stays with me, And I talk to him sometimes about just his version of spirituality. And he talks about how in the last 5 years, his health has like plummeted, but his sense of spirituality has increased tremendously. And he was always a God fearing dude, but it kind of just got way more amplified. So he's reached a zone in his life where he doesn't even talk much. Like there's not too many words exchanged with people. He can barely hear us. But then once in a while, when I have conversations with him, I ask him what goes on in your head, like through the day. What do you think of? And he's like, man, I literally just think of God and I chant like a little bit. And I asked him, did you always chant? He's like, no, I don't know. It just started happening. Like maybe it's some childhood memory that like awakened, and he's still sharp in the head. His senses aren't sharp, but he's extremely sharp in the head. So it just got me thinking about like the nature of life. And now around the same day I had this conversation with him. Now because I'm into the whole meditation yoga school of thought, we focus a lot on doing these full day fasts, okay, like where you basically just do a water fast and there's no food that's gone inside your body for 36 hours. So what happens is like towards the end of that day, say 8 p.m., 9 p.m. on that day, you definitely feel a drop in your senses, like the power in your senses. So you can't hear as well, you don't have the energy to speak. Your eyesight is also not as good as like it is in a normal circumstance. Like you do feel this blunting of the senses. So could you call that a simulation of old age? Maybe. Like it, mathematically speaking, when you quantify those happenings, that's kind of what old people feel like, where everything becomes more inward. Also, the other big kind of change that happens on this full day fast is that your meditations can go way deeper. Because the way for a meditation to go deeper is that you need focus within your meditation session. We don't tell this to beginner meditators because then no one will meditate. But if you've been meditating for a while, it's a game of focus, and your focus is tremendous in those meditations because all of your body's energy is not going into digestion, not going into anything like outward, not going into your senses. It's all like inward. So it just got me thinking that I think the way the human body is developed naturally, when you're older, you're meant to kind of naturally transition into things like dhyan, things like meditation, things like inward focus, reminiscing about your life, reminiscing about the nature of life. So I feel that 50-year age bracket to about 70 may be filled with regret, mostly maybe filled with like, oh, I could have done this, could have done wrong. And then after 70, you just start blunting out and you kind of turn inwards. But what do you think of this? Like, do you think?
No, not that I have any experience, but from what you laid out, I would be very surprised if that's not the case. You're so true. You're absolutely true.
Because when there are these bhajans and kirtans, it's always old people at those. And they also were the kind of people who'd probably make fun of their version of old people, saying that, hey, you're so old, you're going for bhajans and kirtans. But there must be something that they discover, that they're like, okay, that's where I want to be now. So, I mean, that's their version of good conversations like this. I think, anyway, that's my version of it. What do you think of hyper old age, dude? Like, why does life force human beings to like deteriorate like that, other than the spiritual aspect of things?
Yeah, it's something that I wouldn't say I actively think about, but it's something that I've been, for a very different reason, speaking to a lot of young people and telling them, especially the ones who are like below 20, I tell them it's quite likely that none of you are ever going to die.
Yeah.
Like it's quite likely that scientifically there'll be enough progress made that you're not going to die naturally. You may get shot or hit by a bus or anything like that and die because of that, but naturally you're not going to. At least my point when I say that is, everything that you have come to know about how to live life is thus wrong. Like every principle that you know how to live life is wrong. We've been taught one career, one goal, one marriage, 2 kids, one this, one that. All of that is gone. It's gone. You have to prepare yourself for multiple careers. You have to prepare yourself for multiple relationships. You have to prepare yourself for multiple times reinventing your own self. And none of you are prepared for that, for no fault of yours, but just the fact that The system has not set you up for it. So I feel that growing old is going to get out, and becoming a lifelong student is going to come in. And it's just maybe the irrational optimist in me that believes everything that sets us back biologically will somehow be conquered. But what will not be conquered is whatever sets us back emotionally or mentally. Because that is not something which goes back to the exact same description that you gave, like of the 7 levels. And if we no med is going to get us to that. It has to be something that we do within. We can inject ourselves with shit and still get back our physical attributes, but what goes on here is a completely different animal. So it'll be interesting here. It'll be interesting the next 30-50 years for this world. I feel are very, very interesting.
Yeah, that's a very stimulating thought of like multiple jobs that gives everybody the potential to be a multi-millionaire, or like if that's how you look at life.
Yeah.
I want to ask you specifically about marriage and relationships again, because you're a happily married person. How long have you been married for now?
Now 17 years. 13 years.
Wow, dude.
We've known each other for now 21 years. We got married after 7 years, and we've been married now 13 years.
Nice. So in a 21-year journey, what happens to a relationship, dude? And why are there so many couples who separate?
So here is my 2 cents on it. I think separation is inevitable if the growth rates of the individuals is very different. It is bound to happen. So, and that only happens over time, right? So if you understand the concept of compounding, let's say I grow at 5% every year and my wife grows at 10% every year, and we both start with around about 100. For the first 3 years, you wouldn't feel much of a difference, right? Because I in the first year become 105, then I become slightly more, then I become slightly more. So I am about 117 odd by the end of 3rd year. She is at about 124, 25 by the end of 3rd year. That's fine. But come 5 years, come 7 years, the difference becomes stark. Like you suddenly start seeing a diverging path. Jahan I'm growing like this, but she's growing like this. Whether it's professionally, whether it's personally, whether it's anything else. And I just feel that's recipe for just the inevitable. So I personally feel that a lot of relationships should be about ensuring that you are able to pull up the lower or the slower growth rate person to closer to where the higher growth rate person is. And that almost becomes like the responsibility. It's like the slowest one will pace the entire crowd. And that's why it's very important for you to, if you want to increase the speed of the crowd, you don't increase everyone's speed, you just increase the speed of the slowest one. And you automatically see an increase. I feel that relationships are like that.
That's beautiful.
And that's why if the husband's working and the wife is not, it becomes a very clear thing, right? Because the husband is getting exposed to a lot more, is clearly glowing a lot more, while the wife is just unfortunately stuck in whatever, and there is not enough growth coming in. Or if the wife and the husband used to work, but after kids, the wife stopped working, but the husband continued to. So suddenly after that, there is this divergent growth rate that comes in. So enough and more situations that lead to that. But I think the biggest thing for me is a difference in the growth rate of individuals results in relationships getting hampered.
So we've covered the children aspect of it, the wife aspect of it. What happens to the relationship after the kids are born? Like, does it drift? Do they come close together? What happens? Or is it just different for everyone?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, because if suddenly the onus, so here is the absolute fact: the kid or the child needs the mother more than the father for at least the first 2 years. And that means by design and biological design, the mom will be a lot busier than the dad. And that is a slippery slope, because if the father is not participative during that time, they could very well feel like the wife that they had has now just been reduced to a mother and they don't have a wife anymore. Or they could feel like there is no spark anymore, there is no time anymore, there is no appreciation or a conversation anymore. And that's where I feel that fathers bear a far greater responsibility in the first 2 years of the child towards the relationship than mothers, because mothers' almost full responsibility is towards just rearing the child and attending to it.
Dude, what is the beauty of marriage? Like after being married for so long, like I hear a lot of guys going, hey, never get married, don't get a wife. But there has to be some positive aspect. So what is the positive
Yeah,
aspect?
for me, I can only speak for myself. I think the positive aspect is that my best friend is my wife.
Got it.
We have the same taste, we have the same worldview, we like doing the same things, we discuss the same things. Our stand on money, on religion, on parenting, on how to live life is pretty much the same. So we just have a lot of fun together. We just genuinely have a lot of fun together, and it's brilliant company. It is independent because she has her life and I have mine, but at the same time it's participative because we are parents to wonderful kids, and it's wonderful companionship because it's friendship at the core of it. Which is why I think what really helped us, Ranveer, was the fact that we got married after 7 years of dating. And those 7 years we went through a lot. I was in the US, then I went to the business school. So of those 7 years, we were long distance for 3 years, and we withstood that. So we knew that there was something in this that could work and work meaningfully.
Yeah, as they say, long distance is the true test of
Totally,
a
man.
relationship. But now, obviously, the next question has to be about time travel because that's the one thing we haven't covered. So, Mr. Warikoo, after your astrophysics studies, do you think that time travel will be possible at any point?
यार देखो, मेरे साइंस ने मुझे ये बताया है that the laws of physics state that the day the time machine gets made, you start from there. So you can't go back in time beyond the day the time machine started. That's just the law of physics. That's Einstein's theory of relativity. So our only hope in hell to go back to the dinosaur era or to the previous civilizations is that someone had made the time machine already. That's the only way. So I'm just betting on the fact that we are in a simulation and all of this is orchestrated. So at some point of time, we will applaud ourselves for saying कि हमने time machine बना ली है, while it will just be a coder turning on to production one code of the time machine, and that will give us the fake illusion that we are the owners and conquerors of time as well now.
So since this whole episode has turned out to be the nature of life, that's what I think the topic that's what I think the title would be. The question is, like, out of all your studies, is there any science fiction style discoveries that mankind is going to make in the next 10, 20 years, which will change the way humans live, other than the fact that, what's it called?
Biohacking?
Yeah, like other than biohacking, where you can extend your lifespan and all. Other than that, is there other things that will happen in the next 10, 20
I think in the next 20 years, there are, in my opinion, the likelihood of these three things happening. We're definitely going to meet intelligent life form outside of Earth. Absolutely. Number two, interplanetary travel and perhaps even settlement will become a reality. And number three, we will begin to have machines inside of us for virtually everything that we need, whether it is predicting what we are suffering from, or telling us when we should get up, or telling us that this is the vitamin or mineral or protein that is lacking in our diet today, or telling us that the person in front of you is Ranveer, who runs a successful business and is a successful influencer without me even speaking. All of those machines, rather skills as I call it, will be implanted in us. It's like Alexa. Alexa today has skills, so she can answer questions. Imagine an Alexa in here, which is just driven by our thoughts and our telepathy.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I also feel that, human beings are going to achieve the heights in terms of their own physical evolution. If you may, like, we'll be able to engineer better looking kids and, stronger human beings and all that. But the real question is then what will be the big human challenge? And as of now, I can only think of, like, say, mental health and spiritual health. And maybe, like, for lack of a better word, romantic health. And that's going to be like the area of focus in terms of how do we improve these things. But what do you think? What do you think will be the next big challenge?
No, I totally agree with you here. It's like if you go back to the 1970s and you saw someone running on the streets of New York, you would stop them and ask them, why are you running? And they're like, I'm running for my health. And they're like, are you crazy? Like, who does that? So the same thing is happening right now with meditation, where people are like, no, it's just a fad, yaar, bahut mushkil hai, you don't do it, etc. But meditation is going to become mainstream, just as running is today, just as playing a sport is today. It'll become a life form. It will be something that we brush our teeth and we go for a run because we know it's important. So we'll brush our teeth and we will meditate because we know it's important. And that I feel, at least I hope so, but I genuinely feel that in the next 10, 20 years, mental health is just going to become mainstream. It's just going to become so normalized, just the way physical fitness is today, where people will still choose whether to do it or not, and they will know it's the right thing to do, lekin tab bhi bahut sare log nahi karenge. But it won't be like, oh my God, this is what you're doing, are you crazy? It's like, I wish I could do it as well. So it's like that. I wish I could have therapy. I wish I could be mentally at peace. I wish I could meditate. And people will then just not look at it in the way that they look at it today.
Do you meditate as well?
I do every day.
So how much of a link do you observe between your meditation and your mental health?
I think a large part of it here, it's very hard to find a direct linkage because there's just so many other moving parts. But I think that the fact that I start my day very early and I start with meditation for at least 30 minutes, it just centers me in very meaningful ways, because I just realize that I connect with myself in such a meaningful, strong manner that very little during the day can then perturb me. Whether it's a troll on social media, whether it's a bad news, whether it's anything that's not gone my way, you're like, koi baat nahi, like, it's just pieces and parcels of the same journey, and you just move on. I think a large part of my composure comes from meditation for sure.
100%. And like my final question of this whole podcast is why are you on social media? Like, what is the intention? Because it obviously isn't like, oh, I want to run this as a startup. That's why a lot of young people take it up to build out their digital brands. But I see you doing it for other reasons. So like, what is this whole social media game you're playing?
So my social media game, Ranveer, is with the intention of spreading awareness. And here's what I mean by that. I realized that a lot of people, including myself when I was young, we make choices in life from a point of ignorance and not awareness. We make choices in life not because we know every other choice and thus we're making this choice. We make choices in life because we don't know any other choice and this is the only choice we have. And that just is unfortunate, especially in today's world. So everything that I speak about is always from the point of awareness. Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? And it's like you can speak about facts, did you know? Or you could speak about how could you go about thinking. And that's what at least I delve in. Most of my content just forces people to think. I don't give out the answers. I'm not prescriptive. I hate giving out prescriptions because who am I to give out prescriptions? But I love to discuss how I thought about or I think about the same things. And thus when I share it with them, the hope in hell is that they also get some sort of a framework or a guiding force to think about the same things when they encounter them. That's the intention. No outcome. I don't know where this will take. I don't know whether one day I'll just switch off all the social media channels and like done. It's over. It's like I'm always reminded of just what was that Tom Hanks movie?
Castaway.
No. The one in which he changes. He's part of the world's greatest events, and he doesn't even.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Thank you so much.
Gump.
Forrest Gump. How could I forget? It's like it's the exact same thing in Forrest Gump when he starts running. He starts running and he keeps running, and then there is a community that goes behind him, and they're also running. No one knows why he's running, and everyone's attaching different agendas to it. And one fine day, he just stops, and he's like, "I'm done." And it could very well be me. It could very well be me. I picture myself like that quite often.
That's beautiful. But I do feel that there's a lot to gain from you. And I feel like the main kind of learning of an entire generation is going to happen through the internet. So I feel you're one of those key people in that going forward. So don't stop. Probably start a podcast at some point.
I will, man.
Keep doing this
You're
shit.
an inspiration, so I'll pick you out on that and definitely start.
Right back at you. I have been studying a lot about you, and there's actually a lot of things I want to ask you offline, off of camera. But for now, I'm going to be linking your handles, your page down below. And Ankur, any last signing off notes for the listeners?
No, I always say one thing, Ranveer, and this is my biggest stand. Just make sure that you don't live life on someone else's definition of success. Form your own definition of success, and thus form your own definition of failure. And if you are to do that, that'll be the best gift you can give yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Warikoo, for being on the
Thank you,
Ranveer
Mr.
show.
Ranveer. You were a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. It's always a joy to listen to you, and it's been an incredible experience being part of your podcast. Thank you.
I'm glad you had fun. I'm sure we're going to be doing a lot more episodes on aliens, time travel, and other such occult topics. But we'll do this again.
Totally.